You want to know how to be a successful investor? The answer is stay with what you know. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to TV people, internet people. Just stay with what you know. If I told you you can only have 20 investments in your life, you would be very careful. You wouldn't be jumping in and out, listening to hot tips every day, every month. You would stay with what you know, and you would become a successful investor. Everybody watching this knows a lot about something, whether it's fashion or cars or sports or something. When you see something that you know is going to be successful and exciting, don't just say, oh, that's going to be great. Don't tell all you. Then you go and you do your research and you figure out how to and if you should invest and how to invest, and then you invest. You will know it long before I will, or long before other people in the investment community. You will also know when to sell, because you will know when something's going to change again. Nobody likes to hear it. Everybody wants a hot tip. Everybody wants to be rich this month. Well, the second advice is don't listen to hot tips. Stay away from hot tips. Just stay with what you know. I mean, it's boring and nobody wants to hear it. But that's how you become successful. In those days, we did nothing but focus and concentrate and dig deep and dig deep and dig deep. That's how you become successful. Figure out what you yourself know best. When I first started, I had no clue. I once worked for a guy who was a genius trader. I mean, he would about 50 or 100 stocks on the stock exchange. He didn't know much about them. I mean, he knew IBM was a big company, but he didn't know he knew very little. But my God, he could buy and sell it. I mean, he was a genius short-term trader. He never owned anything longer than a week or two, but my God, he was good. But I am hopeless. I'm the worst short-term trader in the world. I didn't know that the people had different styles. I didn't know that wouldn't work for me. But eventually I found by trial and error what I was less bad at, but I was reasonably good at. And so I found my way. I know I'm a terrible short-term trader. Well, I don't even try it anymore. I didn't know it then, but I found out. And whether the style picks you or you pick the style, for me, it was trial and error. I found it early on that if you read the annual report, you do more than 90% of the people on Wall Street. If you read the notes to the annual report, you do more than 98% of the people investing. So back to what I said before, do your homework. This is not easy. Everybody looks on TV and they say, oh, I could have bought Apple 30 years ago. I could have done that. Well, maybe they could have, but they didn't, because it's not easy. So you have to do your homework. You have to research. You have to do the balance sheet. You have to understand the numbers. How do I do it? I don't. By now, I've done it, hundreds, thousands of times. So I have a little bit of experience. I have a little bit of self-knowledge and experience. And so I look at things that I maybe didn't know about before. But I used to be a professor, and I explained to them, you have to understand the numbers, first of all, but then you have to understand the competition. You have to understand everything. This is not easy. I wish it were. One of the things that I have learned about me is if something is really high and popular, I usually don't bother with it unless it's obviously a bubble, and then I will look at it to sell short. But mainly I look at things that are ignored, hated. I want something that if it's hated and ignored, it's probably very cheap. That does not mean I will buy. You have to find something that's hated and cheap, and then you have to find a change taking place. For many decades, I was anti-Russia and Soviet Union. Only time I ever invested in Russia was I was short the ruble once. But then in recent years, I have come to realize, my God, this place is hated, very cheap, low debt. And I thought I perceived a change taking place in the Kremlin. And that's the second word you need to understand, cheap and a positive change. So if you can find something that's cheap and a positive change, you're probably going to get very rich. At first, I thought everybody was smarter than me because they were older and been around more experience than me. Then I found that most of them made many mistakes too. I should stop listening to them. That's when I started realizing a key for me was to find something cheap that was changing. and I realized about the numbers and the balance sheets. I was once working on reading an annual report and doing a spreadsheet. An experienced guy walked in the room and said, people still do that? Nobody looks at spreadsheets anymore. Laughed at me. Well, I mean, I was embarrassed, but I kept doing it. That was what I loved, and by experience, I learned that if I understood the numbers and I understood what was going on, I was to be ahead of other people. It wasn't easy, but it turned out I loved it, and I loved to track down everything. But it was purely by experience and learning that the more I knew about the companies, the competition, the numbers, the more likely I was to be successful, because I realized that nobody else was doing it. And after you have a few successes doing it your way, then you realize, hey, I'm onto something. But it wasn't because I realized I was on it. I realized because I loved it so much. I love tracking down. It's like going to work every day. You were in a three-dimensional puzzle, and every day they were changing the parts all day long, all week long. It is a fabulous way to spend your time, because it's a three-dimensional puzzle that is always changing. My gosh, it's fun. I found my niche. I found what I loved. I found what I was good at. So my answer to you is, if you're looking, figure out what you love the most, whatever it is. And if people laugh at you, you're probably really right. You're probably really doing the right thing. Just find your own passion and stay with it. My passion was, and still is, but especially then, my passion was the investment world, all over the world. It didn't matter. We didn't know about countries. We didn't have all these labels about value and blah, blah. We just found things that were cheap and bought them, or found things that were expensive and sold them short. I loved it. So if you can find your passion, whatever it is, that's what you should do. Ignore your friends. If you say, I want to be a gardener, everybody's going to laugh at you. Your parents are going to say, we didn't educate you to become a gardener. Your friends are going to say, you hear about David? He's a gardener. Your teachers are going to say, we educated you. You do it. You go and become a gardener, because if you love it, you'll never go to work. You'll wake up every day and have fun. You'll be the happiest person around. It won't matter if you're successful, because you're happy. But you will be successful, because those are the people who are the most successful. And someday when you have a chain of garden shops listed on the New York Stock Exchange, your parents are going to call you and say, oh, do you remember how we used to give you seeds when you were a child? We knew you would be a good gardener someday. The professors are going to call and say, but we knew it. We helped you. Give us a building. Your friends are going to call and say, I see you're on the New York Stock Exchange. I need a job. All those people who laughed at you and ridiculed you before, find your passion, whatever it is, and then do it to these. That's all I did in those days. I loved it so much. I just loved it so much. I couldn't wait. I didn't like it when the market closed.